Good evening, hockey fans, and welcome to another episode of Pod Snipe Celly. My name is Dan Bradley. Alongside me is Joel Fernino. Joel, welcome back, buddy.
I am back. I know. Sorry, I keep having to kind of hop back and forth and work stuff.
It's all good. I mean, we've been able to get some great guest hosts on over the last couple of weeks. We had Colton Kaler filling in for you last week. Had Isha Jerome on a couple of weeks before that. We've been able to kind of mix in some guest hosts here, and it's added a different element to the show, which I think has been kind of cool. And I mean, I would hope that people aren't getting sick of hearing from you and me, but it's nice to have some other fresh voices on the show as well.
Yeah, and thank you to everyone filling in every time I've had to be out. Just don't upstage me. Just kidding. Go ahead, upstage me. It's not that hard to do.
So not a low bar to clear, but not a high bar either.
All right,
we'll
settle
down.
Settle down.
Just messing.
Settle. You drink your coffee. Settle that ass down. All right.
Oh, tea. It's too late for coffee for me. I got to go tea here on this one.
It's never too late for coffee. You know what? No one. Our viewers don't actually know. Are you a Dunkin' or a Starbucks? Coffee, specifically.
Say that again. Sorry, I lost you in the headset for a minute.
Are you Starbucks or Dunkin' for coffee specifically, not espresso drinks?
Caribou coffee over both, but between those two, definitely Dunkin'.
That's the correct answer, but there's no what? I mean, I'm not apparently lucky enough to have a physical Caribou store close enough to me. So
I mean, I'm pretty sure they have them in Chicago.
They're here. They're just not that common, especially around the city where I live. But
it's not a great sign when I Google it, and the first thing, actually, I'm surprised there is not a Caribou coffee in Chicago. There is one in Quincy, there is one in Springfield, and there is one in Sycamore. Those are the Caribou coffee locations. So you know what? I'll give you a little bit of I'll give you a bit of a break there. We got our first comment of the night. David saying Caribou is the best. He also welcomes you back and guesses that we have to hate on the Hawks a little less this episode. That's fair.
I didn't get a chance to listen to last week's episode just with how busy everything was. But
it didn't turn into the Hawks bashing party that you would think would come with a Blues and a Wild fan on the show. There really wasn't that degree of Hawks bashing. In fact, I don't know if we actually even talked about the Hawks. I frankly can't remember. They weren't on Wednesday night picks, and I think we had enough other stuff that we were talking about that, it's not to disrespect the Hawks or anything like that. It's just we ended up not talking about them.
I mean, you guys bashing them would be literally and figuratively beating a dead horse. So, I mean...
Yeah, it's not great for Chicago this year. They're actually they have officially been mathematically eliminated. That
happened last week, man. That's old news.
They are the third lowest team in the Western Conference.
Okay, all right.
They are 5 points clear of the Seattle Kraken.
Yep.
And 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so it looks like the fifth lowest team in the league. That sound about right?
Yep. And
just wait. You'll get that top 2 lottery pick with those good odds, and you'll defer one more year on your pick going to Columbus.
No, that's not going to happen. Also, our goal differential is minus 69. Nice.
Nice. I'll tell you, I think Chicago ends up with the number 2 overall pick. I'm just saying.
Can you know what? I want it to happen, so I really don't want you to want it or think it. Sorry, not want it. I don't want you to think it because it's not going to happen if you really think it's going to happen.
Oh, but it is.
No, it's not.
I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen.
I don't know, man. Your predictions, well, we'll get to picks later in the episode, but, based on us, making picks.
Hey, there's a difference between there's a difference between picks on the games and predictions about what will happen. And my prediction of Florida and Colorado for the Stanley Cup is looking pretty darn good right about now. So let's not get too carried away here. David chiming in with a nice as well.
It's true.
Well, want to remind you all as we get that comment from David that we are a viewer-driven show, and if you have things that you want to share without the show, comment. If you want to make your own prediction, which teams end up with the top 2 picks in the lottery, remember that things have changed with how the NHL does its lottery system. So, for example, Vegas misses the playoffs by 1 point. They can't get either of the top 2 picks. They can only move up 10 spots. So while they could theoretically win the lottery per se, they still wouldn't get one of those top 2 picks. So who do you think is ultimately going to end up with those top 2 picks? Sure, chime in with that. Any spicy takes you want to share? Maybe your playoff predictions, something that you've seen in recent weeks that you either like or don't like. Let us know. We want to hear it from you. We are live on YouTube, on Twitter, on Twitch, and on Facebook. You can drop something in the comments below. We'll put it up there on the screen, and we'll read it out over the air here.
Maybe
speak it into the internet
webs. Speaking
into
the
interwebs. There we go.
It's true.
Well, our big talker of the night, Joel, is something that's kind of come up about this time every year for the last not quite decade, but close. Ever since the NHL decided to change its playoff format so that it was no longer division winners get the top couple of seeds. It's just the top 3 from each division make it, regardless of their point total, with 2 wild cards, regardless of division, per conference. Joel, I want to ask you here, does the NHL need to change its playoff format? Kind of taking a look at how things would break down right now. If the playoffs were to start today, Boston would be wild card 1. However, if you went by the actual conference standings, Pittsburgh would fall into that wild card spot. Boston is ahead of Pittsburgh in terms of regular season standings, but because of where they are at in their division, they're a wild card team and headed on the road. Does the NHL need to change things here?
This is going to be an interesting discussion. I mean, definitely.
And I'm going to put a pin in it real quick because we actually have 2 quick predictions.
Oh man! Both, all right, okay.
They're both. Well, you'll see why I did it here. We got David chiming in. Coyotes win the lottery for the bit, and HP Coyotes. The NHL hasn't given up on them and will hand them the number 1 pick. So we've got a couple of people chiming in on the Coyotes there. We had to get those up before we go too far into this conversation.
I love the for the bit from David. Always, or not even just Coyotes. Just hey, hashtag for the bit.
Mm-hmm. That's why we do
Get it trending on Twitter. But to HP's point, while he definitely has, he's got some ground to stand on by saying that the NHL doesn't want to give up on, the Coyotes staying in Arizona, so hand them the first pick. But when it comes to a profitability and a marketing standpoint of the NHL as a whole, I don't think we want what's his name,
Shane Wright.
Shane Wright. I don't think we want Shane Wright playing at ASU's stadium.
Well, why not? Austin Matthews is going to go there in a couple of years.
I don't even know how to respond.
Austin Matthews, the Arizona kid, going to play for
Arizona,
his home team.
I'm pretty sure Austin Matthews would look at his home team and be like,
bring 80 goals to the desert.
Yeah, and those 80 goals will still get you second to last place in the league.
I mean, what's better there, the second to last in the league or getting the first round exit with Toronto? I mean, what are you going to do?
What's better for Matthews?
In general,
I mean, if I'm Austin Matthews, I'd rather be making the playoffs than
fair.
Absolutely,
but another first round exit. The tax differential between being in Toronto and being in Arizona. He's going to make more money playing in Arizona.
He's making tens of millions of, he is, and will continue to be making tens of millions of dollars. I don't think the taxes are bothering him.
Yeah, maybe. You never know.
The pennies on the dollar, man.
Anyway, back to the HP. Shane Wright is praying that Arizona doesn't get the number 1 pick.
He'll pull an Eli Manning and just be like, I'm not going to do it.
He'll pull a Will Smith. Take my name out your mouth on draft night.
Bro, we're explicit. You could have gone the whole quote there.
Yeah, who says I have to?
Yeah, watch your fucking mouth on this show, man.
So, anyway, does the NHL need to change its playoff format?
I mean, we're talking about it at the right time. Playoffs start, in 2 weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Which is
May 1st is
the
final day of the regular season, and then May 2nd, Monday. So actually just less than 2 weeks. In fact, next week's show, Here's a tease for you: is
I was
our
about to
playoff
do that,
preview.
man.
Oh, you got to be quicker than that, Joel. You're
Jeez.
a step slow,
You
just
know
like
what? This
Vegas
is
trying to make the playoffs this year. You're
whoa.
trailing further
Hey,
behind here.
hey. Why are we throwing shade on Vegas?
Oh, you'll see. We'll talk about that later in the show here too. But does the NHL need to change its playoff format? Joel, I'm going to let you run with this one before we get more interruptions.
Yeah, right. Hey, man, I've been off, or I was off for a week. Make this the Dan Bradley show. That's fine. No, I, I, I don't know, man. Like I've been a fan through two major formats, and obviously it was the just straight up like top 8 in each conference make it 1 to 8 seed. It was very simple to understand and figure out. When they adopted the wild card thing, it was kind of weird at first. I remember trying to like study it when they were, trying to bring it out, and it seemed weird at first. And now I just feel like I'm just kind of used to it at this point, and I do kind of like it. How it kind of forces like, look, top 3 in each division, no questions asked. 2 plays 3, and 1 will play the worst wild card, and and so on. But I think it makes for a little bit more of a battle, right? Like as opposed to just all right, top 8 in each conference, that's it, done deal. I I just think you get a little bit more of you get more. I think if I don't have the data on this, hasn't that created more matchups like outside of the division to start the playoffs? If you know what I mean. Like it's not always like Central versus Central for the first 1 to 2 rounds.
Well,
Or
there's been
like
some variance there, but the other thing is you take a look at the standings for the NHL this year, and you have, for example, Boston is on 97 points. If
so
they're
is
in
Pittsburgh.
the Boston, well, them too. Pittsburgh is at 97 too, but Boston has
Yeah.
played 2 fewer games than Pittsburgh.
Right.
So Boston at 97 right now, or Pittsburgh, take your pick, either one. Boston is looking at a wild card spot, probably going to stay in that spot unless they can catch Tampa Bay here, which Tampa Bay could be a 100-point team and be a wild card team in the playoffs. Meanwhile, if you look over at the Western Conference right there, wild cards 1 and 2 right now are both on 91. And Boston's on 97. If Boston were in the Pacific Division, they would be the 2nd seed. If they were in the Western or in the Central Division, they'd still be 4, but they would certainly be closer to Minnesota and St. Louis than where Nashville and Dallas currently are at. So
it's true. I mean, it's a good point. I feel like I don't know how this would be considered being old school. I know this isn't exactly old school. Like I really was kind of a fan of the simplicity of it, just straight up like top 8. 1 plays 8, 2 plays 7, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5. Like it was very simplistic, at least from a fan standpoint. I mean, I don't mind, doing the extra dive into the data, obviously being a data nerd, but like I don't know. I did like the simplicity of that format, and that stop. When did wildcard start again? Was that 2016?
Oh boy.
17? 2017?
I just had this up in front of me.
I thought, yeah, I think I'm gonna guess 2017, I believe, or 2016. It was after all 3 of our Stanley Cups.
Yes, I think 16-17 was the first year that
all right.
they made that change.
I knew. Wait. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So
for the or wait.
Or was it?
No, 13-14.
13-14. Okay.
Yeah, 13-14 was when they changed.
So it was after our first. It was after the 2 cups, but the third. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Yep, I remember that now. Okay. All right. So it's been going on for a while. I liked the simplicity of 1 through 8, but like the way it is now, I see what you're saying, but I mean, that's kind of trying. I feel like that's throwing darts all over a map. Kind of saying like, what if Boston was in the Pacific? Like, I mean, they're not, right? So I mean,
right. That's fair.
It is what it is. I'm not super bullish on either way. I mean, my thought process, this might be a nice segue, would go into like, do you see? I'm not even going to ask you like, does the NHL need to do this? Just can you envision? Take your biases out of it because you might. I think I remember you saying you hated this, but take biases out of it. Could you see the NHL moving in the nearish future to kind of what the NBA started to do this year, or what they did for the COVID bubble? The
where
COVID bubble.
you expand the playoff field to be 12 teams or 10 teams and have a play-in.
Exactly.
I
mean, for me, well, I want to hear what you have to say about it first.
My take on it is, with any sport, you should have a winning record to be in the playoffs. Right now, for the NBA, that is not the case this year. The Pelicans won, I think, 33 games over an 82 game season.
Oh, and I totally
they're
agree.
A playoff team. Like,
that
to me,
not,
that's kind of ridiculous. Now, I understand, say, for example, in the NFL, we've had a couple of like 7, 8-1 teams or a 7-9 team make it.
The NFL's a different story, man.
But
should not have been
that is still such a short schedule there, where it makes sense that one bad game can cost you, but it shouldn't ultimately, one bad game is the difference between a winning and losing record. But when you span that out over 82 games, you really are who your record says you are.
Yep.
At that point, the law of averages kind of gives us a pretty good picture of where you really do fall within the playoff picture. And yeah, anything can happen come playoff time. But looking at these teams, I mean, it's bonkers to me. Like just a couple of years ago, we were talking about how the NHL was going to have 5 teams in the Western Conference that all had 93 points or more. Like this year, looking at the Eastern Conference, there is a very real chance that all 8 playoff teams in the Eastern Conference are over 100 points. Like 100, that's how good the Eastern Conference is this year. And it's going to be a bloodbath for all of those teams to try and get through. There is not a team that I look at on paper and see as an easy out. This year is kind of really an anomaly from what we're used to for playoff positioning for the teams. And the Eastern Conference as an aside, whereas you look over at the Western Conference. Well, let me back up for a minute. The difference between first place and wild card 2 in the Eastern Conference right now is 18 points. Mm-hmm. Kind of a lot, but not nearly as bad as it could be when you consider that the difference between first place in the Western Conference and wild card 2 in the Western Conference right now is 25. So you have a much bigger spread there, and it's not nearly as, it's more top heavy, I would say. Realistically, I think the only team that would surprise me at this point is the Capitals, but that's just because of the injuries. Maybe Pittsburgh too. They've been dealing with some injuries as well. But either way, there are at least 6 teams in the East where if they made it to the Cup final, I would not be surprised to see them there.
No,
in the West,
that's fair.
In the West, I think it's 2. I think it's Colorado or Calgary, and anybody other than those 2, to me, that's a surprise to see anybody other than those 2 in that spot. So as far as does the playoff picture ultimately, you want the best teams playing the longest. And yeah, you can get an upset. Yeah, you can run into a hot goaltender or a team that all of a sudden just starts clicking and rifling off goals. I get it. That happens. But ideally, you want the playoffs to be who is the best team. And under the current format, you have instances where the best teams are getting eliminated in the first round because of the structure. We had David ask a question a little while ago about if there are teams that got hosed on not making the playoffs that would have under a different format. Now, there isn't an instance of them missing because of the wild card, but there are instances where a team has missed on if you were to do the 3-2-1 point system, where 3 points for a win, 2 points overtime or shootout win, 1 point overtime shootout. And that's a different scenario too. That's a whole different conversation.
That's a totally different conversation.
We're not going to get into that one tonight. We should at some point, but we're not going to get into that one.
That's an off-season conversation.
Yep. So for that reason, I think it can and has resulted in good teams getting eliminated probably earlier than they should have. I don't know that I did really like the old system where it was 1 through 8. Like you said,
That's what
division
I'm saying.
winners fine. Division winners get the top two.
Right.
They get that home ice guaranteed for the first couple rounds, and then go from
Mhm.
there.
Yep.
But because winning your division still has to mean something. Otherwise, why have divisions? But when
It's
it
true.
gets to the actual playoffs, I like the fact that there would be playoff rivalries between teams that weren't in the same division. It was incredible to watch Chicago and the Kings going at it uh, in the early 2010s, or to watch Chicago and Vancouver play each other,
Yep.
because that was how the playoff matchups would shake up.
Yep.
Now that wouldn't happen until the conference finals, and with apologies to any Vancouver fans listening, they're not playing Chicago anytime soon. And in fairness, Chicago's probably not getting there anytime soon either, but I digress. It's more fun when you have some of those rivalries that form outside of the division, because you've already got rivalries in the division. Everybody
Yeah.
knows, Hawks Wild is a rivalry, and the Wild and Colorado, or Minnesota Dallas,
Hawks
or the Hawks
Blues.
and the Blues, and
The
looking
days of
across
old, Hawks Red Wings.
yeah, and again, that was at the time, that was the division.
Yep.
So like those
Exactly.
those are established already. The way you get new rivalries to form, and the way that you get these stars to be shown in new markets, is to have those playoff series where it's not the same. Um, the current system, I think, caters almost too much to established hockey fans. And I think changing back to that old format of 1 through 8 would really do a great service to the NHL in showcasing these stars in different markets. Connor McDavid gets a ton of coverage in Canada. He just does, because he's good, but he doesn't necessarily get the same playoff coverage in Dallas, for example. So let's say you had a first round playoff series between Edmonton and Dallas.
Dallas.
All of a sudden, Stars fans are going to become really familiar with just how good Connor McDavid is. That helps grow the game. It helps build the brand. I think that is more beneficial to the league than, it's a rivalry as old as time. Well, the casual fan isn't going to know the
Exactly.
history of the rivalry and why it's a rivalry. They don't know. They're not going to care. But seeing these stars in other markets, it could be like, oh, I really need to start watching when Connor McDavid plays. I really need to watch when Austin Matthews plays. I need to watch Kane, Kaprizov, you name it. Any number of players that aren't getting that same market exposure because the NHL is pigeonholing itself into these forced rivalries. I think it's problematic for the league, and I personally, I would change it back. If I were in charge for a day of running the NHL, that would be one of the things on my agenda of things to change.
Yeah, you basically just said everything I was gonna say. No, I mean it's true. I mean I couldn't agree more. I would rather see, especially for the growth of the game's sake, not just my own selfish wants. Like I'd much rather start seeing new rivalries form. We saw a couple this season form. Minnesota and oh god, who was it? You guys were really going at it with somebody, and I can't remember who it was.
Boston
Yes,
after,
yes. After Kaprizov got
yeah, Trent Frederick.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
boarded
like
Kaprizov, and I was
now
worried the
that's
season was over.
yes, that's outside. That's total. That's
Mhm.
That's outside conference. I get that, but even still, like that turned into a rivalry. You see, even in the regular season, what these not usual rivalries when they turn into it. It's I saw myself like I was like, yeah, sure, I'll tune into the Wild because they're in the division, but for the Hawks aren't in the playoffs. Why should I really care that much to care? To watch the
Mhm.
Wild or anything? Now, me, yeah, I love hockey, but I remember the next Wednesday night uh, matchup with the Wild and the Bruins. I knew about the history from the last game you guys played, so I knew I was
Mhm.
like, hell yeah, I'm tuning into that. I want to see some fisticuffs. I want to see some bloodshed. Like,
Yeah, and
let's
it
go.
it was pretty chippy that second time out too.
Exactly.
People
So
don't forget. Hockey players don't forget
no,
that
exactly,
kind of
and
stuff.
that's kind of and that's kind of my point. Hell, uh, I'll think back to after the Hawks' first cup when they did the two first round exits. That rivalry between us and Arizona or Phoenix at the time. That was huge. It didn't last long, but like based on what happened to Hossa and everything, that set the table for not just that playoff series being good, but then that rivalry kind of stayed on for pretty much that next season because everyone was just like, well, that playoff series was chippy. We saw what happened to Marian Hossa, like a beloved player.
Mm-hmm.
And the league did it. Like, it was one of the first matchups of the regular season that next season after the lockout, of course, and shit went nuts during that game. So that's the thing. I would much rather start seeing, especially to grow the game more, like start giving us more, just start giving us more out of market style rivalries that can come up from the playoffs. Like Edmonton LA could potentially be a matchup right now. That could be fun. Like, that's two of the biggest stars in the league versus a bunch of young up and coming players on the Kings. Like, that could really get fun. Something, and we're gonna do a whole playoff, teaser type of episode next week. But like, there's just I'm in favor of growing the game above all else. That's what I want. I've seen it grow. It's continuing to grow. It's bigger than ever, but bigger than ever is still not big enough, obviously. I would say, to wrap up to your question, does it need a change? No. I think it's kind of all right, but I mean, if they wanted to go back to the old format, 1-8 and division winners, of course, they want to go back to that, I'm all for it. I think it'd be awesome. And not to mention, if they, for hockey specifically, and this might be a hot take, here's a spicy take. You guys have been without my spicy takes.
Oh, here we go.
If they want to expand the playoff format and revisit what they did for the COVID bubble playoffs, I'm in. I'm all for it. More playoffs, a longer playoff season, and which would mean kind of like a sooner end to regular season play and an earlier start to playoff play. I know this year the only reason that the whole later playoffs is happening was because of the Olympics break that we took, even though they didn't play in it. But also
that and the COVID pause too, where they shut things down for
about 2 weeks.
Hey, we got breaking news into the show here.
Whoa!
Courtesy of HP. Stop me if you've heard this one before. Okay. Kevin Fiala scores. Minnesota Wild up 1-0. Thanks HP for the in-game update here.
Back up. That's not breaking news?
Yeah, it is.
Kevin Fiala scored a goal. That's not breaking news.
No, sure it is. Wild are up 1-0.
Now people are going to be listening to this on demand and be like, "Whoa, breaking news getting broken on Pod Snipe Celly."
We've done it before. We've broken actual news.
I don't want to hear. Yeah, I know
you weren't here. You weren't here when we broke that Mark Stone was coming back, but we broke that during the show. That's a recent example.
All right, and that's great. I want to break that kind of news. Don't give me that Kevin Fiala just scored a goal.
The Wild need to do everything they can to re-sign Kevin Fiala. I'll get off my soapbox there, but
that is not breaking.
That's a rant that's coming at some point here, depending what the Wild actually do with Fiala.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say I would love to see an expanded format in the playoffs, because while people obviously we saw it with the NFL, that sucked. Like that first expanded wild card weekend, I loved watching all the games, but those games were not close whatsoever, and it was just straight up. Thanks for the update. Let's go. I'm surrounded by Minnesota.
See, we're playing to the fans who are watching live. That's how it works.
Help me out.
We appreciate the unmanned listeners, but we got to do something for the folks tuning in live too. So
there's too much Minnesota going. There's too much Minnesota testosterone flowing right now. I need some Chicago.
You know what I'm doing right now?
Yeah, that's not how it's done.
I'm playing you a sad song on the world's
doing
smallest
it wrong.
violin. You want more people to listen? Go get them.
I did.
Go get more Hawks fans to listen. Go get more fans of any other team. But for now, the Wild fans are carrying the show.
You know what? That's fine. I'm a Wild fan this year. Give me your first round pick.
And hey, how about this? We sat and watched a Hawks game with you this weekend. Yeah, we did. Thanks, HP. We did. We did tune in and we watched the Hawks game.
What does that have to do with my rant about breaking news of Kevin Fiala scoring? Yes, you watched a Hawks game. We watched a Wild game, sort of.
Sort of. Yeah. Do what you got to do.
The end of this question has gone off the rails, and I quite
frankly
love it.
It really has. I think we ought to just move into Wednesday night picks here.
Mass hysteria. What?
I was going to say, should we just move into Wednesday night picks? We kind of wrapped up everything that we're going to hit for
you teased us talking about Vegas.
Oh, I did.
Vegas, Chief. Come on now.
That's because they're playing tomorrow night, and I was going to cover that when we talked about them for Wednesday night picks. like
You
we
didn't
discussed before the show.
Don't try and save
That is
yourself.
exactly what we said we were going to do before the show.
You did not say that.
Thanks for listening.
You did not say that was going to be during Wednesday
That
night.
is 100% what I said before the show. That's why I said that we were dropping that as a full segment. We're going to cover it during Wednesday night picks.
Don't believe this man. He is lying to you, and you should treat him as such. Treat him as a liar. Move into Wednesday night picks. Let's go.
All right, Wednesday
Let's
night
make
picks.
some money.
Joel, a good week last week, 3-0, as was interim guest host Colton Kaler, who also 3-0, and that's he's the first guest to have the proverbial perfect week. Something we're chasing.
Are we gonna run out of room on the scoreboard?
We might. Depends how many guests we have. We may have to shorten it. We may have to come up with our own banner, our own artwork to change the background of the show. Maybe have a little. I'm
gonna try to not miss any shows.
We can stack it like this so that the big screen is the scoreboard.
You're going Bill O'Reilly. You're just doing it live. Here we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we can change our layout here, just kind of mess with things and go from there for what we're going to have for format. But there's ways to make it work. So it's an option. Joel is feeling spicy tonight. Joel is feeling spicy every night when there's hockey on. Except for now. Did we lose Joel?
See.
Joel, are you there?
No, I'm here.
Oh, you're here. You're lagging a bit. That's not that is a little worrying here, but yeah, Joel and Colton Kaler each with a 3-0 week last week. I got a little bold trying to predict that the Kings were going to keep up with the Colorado Avalanche, and that did not work out. In fact, you could have spotted the Kings 4.5 goals; they still wouldn't have covered. It was a 9 spot from the Avalanche in that one, and then of course we had a 4-0 loss for the Flyers, who I had picked to cover the spread. So it didn't quite work out there. But we did all hit Blue Jackets last week, so we're all on the board. Joel, 43-30 on the season. I went 38-38 overall. Colton Kaler, 3-0. Luke Morrison, HP, 1-2. Isha Jerome, 1-3. We got to get Isha back on. We got to get some redemption for that, man, at some point. But speaking of getting back on, we got Joel back now. Y'all good there? You fix your internet?
I'm good. I mean, I saw the lagging, but I could hear you the whole time.
Yeah, HP calling for a podcast solo. I'd rather not. I'd rather have Joel here. It's more fun that way.
Yeah.
But speaking of, let's jump right in with those Vegas Golden Knights that we talked about before. They are at home tomorrow night. Washington Capitals plus 110. Vegas Golden Knights minus 135. Joel,
man,
who are you taking in that one, buddy?
That's tough because they are literally. As to both.
We're losing you again.
Not hear me? What the hell? No, it looks fine on my end.
It's coming through really choppy. Can somebody who's watching tune in and confirm that that's what's going on? Are we losing Joel here, or is it just between the two of us?
Hold on.
Well, while Joel holds that thought, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of jump in here with the records on the season. Vegas Golden Knights, 41-31-5 on the season, good for 87 points. Capitals, 43-23-10. They're on 96. Goal differential for Colorado is plus 38. For Vegas, it's plus 17.
Interrupting.
Vegas, 6-3-1 in their last 10. And the Capitals, 7-3-0 in their last 10. Joel, we got confirmation here. Can't confirm Joel is choppy.
Am I choppy now?
You are not now, so I'm going to shut up and let you go.
So I'm going to go with my second team. I got to go Vegas. I know the Capitals are hot too, but and again, they're both trying to make a push into to keep and or stay in that second wild card spot. And that's why this is so tough for me. But I mean, I'm going to take the home team. Vegas they play really well at home. What they are, let me look. I just had it up. They are 21-15-3 at home. They're rocking a 2-game losing streak, but they just recently got Mark Stone back. And I mean, we were going to talk about this, like how their schedules look. Are they going to make the playoffs? Is this going to be the first year they finally don't make the playoffs? I'm going to ride, this might be a spicy take too, but I'm going to ride that. No, I think they do get in. I think they make up that ground. They're 4 points out of that second wild card spot, which seems a little bit insurmountable, especially because Nashville and Dallas both have a game in hand on them too. So that's why I'm saying this is a spicy take. I still think they make it. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I don't care. But
go ahead.
I'm gonna go with Vegas on this one. I'm probably gonna be wrong because Capitals have been playing well too, but I'm gonna go Vegas.
I'm going to take the Capitals, and here's the kicker for me. This season on the road, the Capitals are 24-8-5. That's a pretty darn good road record, picking up more than 75% of your road points there. That's huge. Even if the Caps, they would be on the money line, but on the puck line. We have the money line odds up on the screen here, and I'm waiting for the app to refresh here. That game when it switches over to Caps plus 1.5 on the puck line, they're at minus 210. So that should tell you about where the odds fall for this one. I do like Washington on the road here. I think they are also scrapping for playoff position, and they're probably going to end up as wild card 2. However, they're only 1 point back of Pittsburgh and do have a game in hand. So if they could somehow leapfrog the Pens, who are 3-6-1 in their last 10 games. Pittsburgh kind of fallen off the wagon, but the Eastern Conference, those teams are all locked. It's just a matter of who's going to be where. Washington, if you're looking at, would I rather play Carolina in the first round, Florida in the first round, or the Rangers? I want the Rangers out of those three. I think that's the team that you would be most likely, if you're Washington, to pull that upset with. So we can't count out Washington either from trying to avoid being one of the wild card teams. I'm going to go Caps on the road here. Vegas, I think this is the year that they miss the playoffs for the first time.
To your point,
3 of their 4 years, they've been to the semifinal round / conference finals. I think Vegas is going to miss, and I think it's ultimately going to be a good thing for the organization. But I think for now, I think they're going to miss this year.
To your point, I actually was looking at we got plenty of time. I was looking at the remaining schedules for Vegas and who they're trying to catch. So they're trying to catch mainly Dallas and Nashville.
Yep.
And I threw LA in that mix too, just because LA is only in that third spot by
3 points. They're actually closer.
By 3 points. Yeah. So exactly.
So they're closer to LA than they are to Dallas and Nashville.
Exactly. So that's why Vegas, that's where this wild card kind of gets a little weird, right? It's not like Vegas is fighting Nashville and Dallas, but they're really fighting the Kings first. So 3 points out of that, but 4 points behind, Nashville and Dallas, obviously that's why. So Vegas's upcoming schedule, aside from what we just said with the Capitals, are at home against the Sharks, at Dallas.
Probably a win. And that game right there might determine who's in, who's out.
What, at Dallas?
Yeah, the Vegas-Dallas game, that very well could determine who's in, who's out.
That's why it's going to be huge, and if you want to keep that playoff streak alive, you better step up.
That is an absolute must-win.
Absolutely. That is the must-win of their last. They have 5 games remaining, including tomorrow's. That absolutely, you took the words right out of my mouth. That is the must-win you circle. But aside from that, like I said, home against the Sharks, that
should be a win.
If that's not a win, then you don't deserve to be in the playoffs. At Chicago, that's a win. If that's not a win, then which we've beaten them once, I think already. And then at St. Louis, that's
probably a loss.
That's a tough one to.
Although if that's the last game of the regular season, St. Louis could be starting Binnington, give Husso some rest ahead of the playoffs,
and give whoever else a rest too.
Whoever else they could be resting guys if they know that their seed is locked. They know basically it's a lock. They're going to play Minnesota, barring some ridiculous fall off over the last week and a half. It's not going to happen.
No,
it's going to be Minnesota and St. Louis, and that series.
Oh, that's going to be a fantastic.
We're going to talk a lot about that one next week. Yes. I think that one probably goes the distance, and I think we have at least 3 overtime games in that series.
I'm okay with that. So
free hockey, I'll take it.
Now, with that in mind, Oh man, yeah. You know what? I'm not feeling too good about them catching LA at this point. Then, so that to me seems like it's not tough. You would
That's
say, but
I would say you're looking at
I would say you're looking at.
maybe 2-2-1, maybe 3-1-1 in
You're
that
right.
span there. I think that Dallas game, that could be an overtime game. Could go either way against the Caps. Probably, yeah, it could go either way.
If they decide to
I'd
get
say
hot,
3-1-1. I think it's realistic that they
that's
could get 7
realistic.
out of 10 points.
If they could get hot, like we know they
Mm-hmm.
definitely have the star power to be able to do,
Mm-hmm.
I could see 4-1, but that involves beating Washington tomorrow night, and that definitely involves getting a win over the Stars.
Yeah, that basically. I mean, and looking at the injury report too, Carrier is still out. Nolan Patrick is still out.
But aside from that, they're
Haig,
virtually
Riley Smith, Brossois.
Yeah.
They got a lot of guys that are banged up, but they do have their stars back. They've got Pacioretty,
Exactly.
They've got Stone, they've got Eichel, they've got Pietrangelo defensively, Shea Theodore, and Robin Leonard in net. So
exactly. So that's my thing. Now, that's why I kind of mentioned that I think they're more realistically chasing the Stars and Nashville, because if you look at the Kings' upcoming schedule for the remainder of the season, they too 5 games at Anaheim.
Should be a win.
At home against the Hawks should be a win. Again, at home against the Ducks should be another win. At Seattle should absolutely be a win. And then at Vancouver should be a win.
Could go either way, but yeah, probably should if you're going to be a playoff team.
If they are that second, or if they are that 3 seed, like the standings say they are, and if they are what their record says they are, I should not be surprised if I see a 5-0 run here to kill off the rest of their season, and they solidify that 3 seed and first in the Pacific. But
what are we looking at for Nashville and Dallas over that stretch? I can call up one.
Not first in the Pacific. My bad.
I know what you meant.
Yeah. So we're looking at for Dallas, they have 6 games.
They're at Edmonton tomorrow night, which is going to be our next pick that we talk about here.
Yes, they're at Edmonton tomorrow night. They are at Calgary on Thursday.
That's tough.
They are at home against Seattle. That should be a win.
That's a win.
The at home against Vegas, like we talked about. And then at home against the Coyotes, and then at home against the Ducks.
Imagine if the Coyotes spoil the playoffs for Dallas with a win.
For the bit, the Coyotes spoil the playoffs
love
for Dallas.
That. Anything to keep Dallas out of the playoffs. Norm Green still sucks. Dallas can eat it.
I'm with you. And then for Nashville, we're also looking at, so Nashville and Dallas both have 6 games remaining, while LA and Vegas have 5. So they each have a game in hand of both of them anyway, but it doesn't, that'll set up the wild card scenario. But for the Preds, we got at home against Calgary, at home against Tampa.
that at home against Calgary is tonight, by the way. So that'll start right by the time the show ends.
Yep. And I'm sorry, not at home against Tampa. At Tampa is what I should say.
If you know, you know.
How am I a fucking new guy?
No, that's not what FNG is.
Oh, I got it.
There you go.
I got you.
Kid.
Took me a second. Sorry, I'm hungry. So Preds are at home against Calgary. That's tough. At Tampa, also tough. At home against Minnesota, also tough. At home against Calgary, also tough.
Yeah.
At Colorado, also tough.
Oh, that's brutal.
And then finally, they get to go through that hell of 5 games to close out the season, and their final game of the regular season is at Arizona.
Again, could be a spoiler there as well.
I don't know how much of a spoiler. I mean, the Preds can be feisty, they can be chippy, and they can hold out here. But man, if you're going to tell me that 5 of your remaining 6 games of the season, when you're trying to stay in the playoffs, are against Calgary twice, Minnesota, Tampa, and Colorado, I would basically be like, well,
that is very, very difficult.
If I'm a Nashville Predator fan, that would mean I'm a shitty person. But also, spicy takes all day. I missed a week. I got to catch up. Um,
Go ahead.
if I'm but in all seriousness, if I am a Predators fan, I'm terrified, and I'm already mentally preparing to not make the playoffs with that right there.
That is a grueling schedule, but you get through that, you get to the playoffs.
You're feeling good.
Chip chair chance, anything can happen.
Exactly, you're feeling
And
good.
to Arizona's case, they beat St. Louis at St. Louis this year.
Yep.
They beat Los Angeles in Los Angeles this year. They beat Toronto at home.
Mm-hmm.
They shootout victory
They
over
beat Toronto
Colorado.
twice too, didn't they? Not at home, but they beat
I
Toronto
think so.
twice. I
Yes,
think.
yes,
Yeah.
they did.
Yeah. One was at
One,
home, one was away.
yeah, they were at Toronto in overtime for the win,
Yeah.
and then a 2-1 win in regulation at home. These are games. Beat Dallas 3-1 at home. It
They've been playing
exploded to a 9-2 win at Detroit. I know Detroit's not a playoff team,
Detroit's
but
not good, but
you look at this schedule and like Arizona is a team that every once in a while just pulls it together against a good team. Down the stretch with Dallas and Nashville grinding for that spot, they could sneak in there. I think this is probably a good point where we should talk about Dallas tomorrow night at Edmonton and their route to the playoffs there. Trying to go through Edmonton, who still, Edmonton, they're kind of fighting for playoff positioning here too. They're 4 points ahead of the Kings, have the game in hand, but again, you don't want to trail off here down the stretch either and be giving away games that you should be winning against playoff teams. Joel, does Edmonton win at home tomorrow night against Dallas?
To me, this is actually, I don't even have to think about it. Yeah. They are 24-12-1 at home, Edmonton is. They are rocking an 8-1-1 in their last 10, currently on a 2-game winning streak as well. They are kicking back into gear at the right time of the regular, at the right time here. They're getting hot. They're going to try and ride that wave, and I'm kind of with you. I don't believe in Dallas. I really don't. I mean, they're clinging for dear life on that final wild card spot, right? And with what we were talking about with LA and Vegas and whatnot with wild cards, and I don't believe in Dallas. I don't. Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong, and I've definitely bet against them and gotten screwed. But I'm not going to bet against Edmonton, and I'm not going to bet against them now that they're starting to get hot at the right time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too. And looking at over the course of the season here with Edmonton's games, when you break it down into a home and road split, Edmonton is 7th in the league at home in terms of goals per game, 3.59. When you switch that to being on the road, they take a bit of a tumble here. They're down to 11th at 3.26. So not too far of a tumble, but enough. It's fair to say they are a better team at home. Conversely, Dallas on the road this season is at 2.54 goals per game on the road. That's kind of brutal. That's 29th in the league. But when you switch to Dallas at home, that number is up to 3.19. So I got to go Edmonton here at home. I got to think they take care of business, move one step closer to locking up that second seed and home ice in the first round by virtue of their finish in the Pacific. I'm with you here, Edmonton at home. The most lopsided game of the night is what we're expecting here. Colorado Avalanche minus -1.5 is still at minus money. If you want to put, spot the crack in a 1.5, you'll still get plus money if they manage to lose this game by 1 goal at home. We do not often see home dogs on the puck line still be at plus money. That is a very rare thing to see here. But Seattle probably has kind of earned that. A home record this season of 14-21-3. Colorado 24-10-3 on the road. Joel, it's stupid to not pick Colorado in this one, right?
I would say so. Now, yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, if you want to throw a couple bucks on the Kraken, like if you're not worried about most likely losing your money, you're going to make out pretty nice if for some reason they decide to, cover there. I can't do it. I can't. I'm not going to go spicy here. Like I'm going against our own show wishes. I'm not doing it for the bit.
Philip Grubauer, grudge match, shutout against his former. I can't even get through that sentence. Nope, not going to happen. It's Colorado.
I want to throw up.
Yeah,
No, it's absolutely Colorado.
It's kind of cool as a story as that would be. It's not happening. Colorado by 1.5. Honestly, I think about taking them at -2.5 in this one and seeing if I can't get a little extra money on that.
Actually,
those
not a bad idea.
those alternative puck lines, like you can make if you want to. In fact, let me try and call up that one here and see if they have an alternative puck line for that game. Yeah, try to call it up. I've seen them do it before. Maybe it's a little too early for that. Yeah, I'm not seeing the lines here as quickly as I could. But if you're taking Colorado over 4.5 goals, that's +130. To me, that seems like a good cash. That seems like a pretty safe bet there. So those alternative puck lines aren't up yet, but I think Colorado wins that one, and they probably win pretty big. Mild salsa from Joel after such spicy takes.
Look, I had the habanero salsa for the first couple takes of the show, and then I decided to just go to like a mild guacamole, if we're going to be honest.
Well, and this next one I think you're going to get a little heated up for as well, because it's your hometown team, the Chicago Blackhawks, on the road at the Arizona Coyotes. Hawks are -155, Arizona +135, and Joel, I'm going to have to make you choose. Do you follow your heart and your home team, or do you take Coyotes for the bet?
No, man. It's so tough. I love doing it for the bit. And it's kind of a double whammy because I always kind of preach that don't ever bet money with your heart. Although I did that the other night, it actually worked out. But nah, I'm taking my boys. Screw the bit.
I had a feeling that you were going to go that route. Let me tell you.
I'm ready.
What are my rules when it comes to betting? Coyotes for the bit.
Coyotes for the bit.
Love a home underdog on the money line. And Chicago, not that good this year. Arizona, 2 wins in 3 games against the Blackhawks already this season.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking the Coyotes at home in this one. Coyotes for the bit. We are going to do it. Coyotes at home. I like it. I can't explain it.
It's probably going to happen. But
it is a long losing streak here, a 7-game losing streak. I didn't actually realize when we were talking about the Sharks earlier in the show that the Sharks are on a 10-game losing streak, 6-4 in their last 10. But the second longest losing streak in the league does belong to the Coyotes, losers of their last 7. I think it comes to an end tomorrow night. Coyotes snap the skid. Coyotes for the bit at home. So to recap picks here, Joel is taking the Blackhawks. I'm taking the Coyotes. I am taking the Capitals. Joel is taking Vegas at home. We're both taking Colorado by $1 billion on the road at Seattle. And then we are both taking Edmonton at home against Dallas. We get a hashtag for the bit to
love it.
Kind of close things out here.
I'm fine with
the
it.
Pick segment.
For the bit's probably going to win here. I just, I'm going with my heart this time. Don't do as I say, not as I do. Do not ever really do that. I'm going to do it though.
There you go, Joel. Yeah, Joel is picking with his heart and not his head. I am picking with both my head and my heart on that one to take the Coyotes at home. For the bit, man. It's for the. I love the bit. I don't have the bit, and that's what I'm loving. Not just the Coyotes.
Look, I don't have my hashtag for the bit T-shirt yet, so
we will have to design that over the next couple of weeks here.
Yes, I agree.
That's going to be a thing. But for tonight, we've only got a few minutes left for the show here. It's time for some 2 minutes for roughing, our favorite segment, our way to close out the show here. Joel, would you be so kind as to put 2 minutes on the clock for me?
Yes, sir. All right. Are you introing, or you just want me to jump right in?
Yeah, count it down.
All righty. In 3, 2.5, 2, 1, and go.
One of the most frustrating things to understand as a hockey fan is what constitutes a penalty and what constitutes embellishment. Now, there are some times where it's more obvious than others, and times where, yes, that was a very blatant trip, or no, the player didn't actually get hit in the face with a stick, he just flopped, or he's diving to the ice. We've seen this happen for years. And it's not just a problem that's limited to hockey. There is, to a degree, a flopping problem in sports because there will be, at times, an advantage given for the flopping. We saw it in the Minnesota Wild game the other day where it looked like there was a high stick. A camera on the other end of the ice showed that it wasn't, but from where the referee was, he called a high stick, partially because there was a player reaction. He kind of cocked his head back and responded to that. But one thing that doesn't make sense to me about the embellishment penalty is, why is it that a player is called for an infraction and there's a player getting called for the embellishment? Either the penalty was egregious enough that it rose to the level of a penalty, or it was not a penalty, the player embellished to sell the call. It's got to be one or the other. It can't be both. There are such a rare number of examples of instances where a player was actually on the receiving end of an infraction and did embellish it. I can count it on one hand. It really doesn't happen that often. But to me, there has to be a difference between the two. It cannot be a penalty and embellishment. You don't get both. Embellishment is what it's supposed to be for diving. That's what the call is at its core. That's the core of the rule. It's got to be one or the other. It can't be both, and the NHL really needs to take a look at changing that rule.
Embellishment. Sidney Crosby.
Not so much lately, but early in his career, absolutely. Early in his career, absolutely. I'll give you that.
Or embellishment in sports, NBA.
Oh boy.
I mean, it's actually that's a pretty good rant. You know what's funny though? You gave me that ahead of time. We sometimes don't do that. You gave me that ahead of time, and I actually was right there with you. Mm-hmm. But as you were explaining it, I actually started thinking of scenarios where actually I could see both.
I can't think of an example that comes to mind off the top.
Oh, I don't mean like,
and I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying I can think of many more examples where an embellishment was called and there was still a penalty to the offender on the play.
Oh no, and that's what I'm saying. Most of the time, I would probably about like 90% of the time, like I agree with you. If you're embellishing, there should not be a coincidental going on there. You embellished it, so clearly it wasn't a penalty. However, well, no, because I guess by the word of the rule, then I guess if, let's say, like, you got your sticks underneath someone's skate, right, and it happened to be kind of a maybe it was a little I would have to like actually get a visual on this, but it's like it's a trip. Could it have been a trip if maybe it was just a little stumble, but instead you embellished and decided to do a front flip? Like it's one of those things where, but the trip was still there. But then we'd start getting into the conversation of, all right, do we review penalties? And that might get a little annoying.
It could. At the end of the day, I want to get the call right. And I would rather see us take a penalty off the board upon realizing that, hey, that wasn't actually a penalty. He didn't actually get him. Yep. Even if that slows the game down by a couple minutes, I think we have enough camera angles and technology now that you could implement that relatively seamlessly to control things on that end.
Agreed.
But it doesn't have to be that way. We can separate a penalty call from an embellishment, and we should be able to do that on the ice in real time. I understand it's easier said than done, probably. But I think in a lot of cases, you can tell when somebody is selling a call. And for that reason, because they're selling it, it's not a penalty, or it was a penalty and they're not embellishing.
Robo refs. I, for one, welcome our robot overlords.
It
On
could
that
be
note.
coming one of these days. Well, that is, I think that's a good place to end for tonight. Thank you to everybody who tuned in live. As a reminder, we are available on demand on iTunes and Spotify. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow on Twitter at PodSnipe Celly. Words are getting hard at the end of the show here.
That's just your age.
Yeah, I'm getting old. As a reminder, we are also powered by Noop Sports and the Sports 2.0 Network. Be sure to follow those two channels on social as well. And another one you should follow is In the Green Bets. They are coming up next after this show. As soon as we're done here, we'll get things switched over and they'll be on. So stay tuned to the Sports 2.0 Network for that. But that is it for tonight's episode of Pod Snipe Celly. Give us a follow on social. Give us a shout out throughout the rest of the week. Enjoy watching all the good hockey on deck. Joel, anything you want to say to the people before we leave?
Robot umpires.
Took too long. Goodbye.